Good morning. On behalf of the YWCA and the congregation of the First Baptist Church of Pottstown, I welcome you here today to a service to honor and celebrate the life of Beth Rakowski. We gather to pay tribute to a friend, a coworker, a family member, even as we continue to feel the pain and sadness of the loss. Our grief is real, but so is our gratitude for who Beth was and what she meant to each of us and to the community as a whole. So today we honor her life and the legacy she leaves us as we continue to be present here in the world that we shared with her. I am the Reverend Marcia Bailey, and alongside me this morning is Ms. Natalie Macelia, our seminary intern here at FBC. You are in a welcoming and affirming American Baptist congregation. That means we're glad that you're here, whoever you are and however you know yourself to be. It means that this congregation has heard and responded to a call to embody God's love and justice, particularly for the marginalized, and that we partner with others who share that purpose in the world. We are delighted that our space and the Y space have been commingled over the last few years. We welcome you to this space and to this service of remembrance and celebration. Hear now a call to worship in the ancient voice of the psalmist. God is our refuge and our strength, who from old has helped us in our time of distress. Therefore, we fear nothing, even if the earth should open up in front of us and the mountains plunge into the depths of the sea. For if the earth's waters rage and foam and the mountains tremble with its heaving, there is a river whose streams make glad the city of God, the holy dwelling of the Most High. God is in its midst. It will never fall. God will help it at daybreak. Though the nations are in turmoil and empires crumble, God's voice responds and it melts the earth. Adonai Sabaoth is with us. Our stronghold is the God of Israel. I invite you to pray. Holy and loving God, be present now among us, we pray. The loss of Beth is real. The pain is deep, and the world, as we now know it, both particularly here and at large, seems unrecognizable. Speak words of comfort and hope to us today as we share our tears and laughter, grief and joy. Open our hearts to one another and to your presence, which seeks to console and care for us, that we may honor Beth, her life, her work, her essence, not only by what we say and do here today, but in our own work and lives as well.
Take comfort in these words from the Hebrew Bible. Adonai, you have been our refuge from one generation to the next. Before the mountains were born, you brought forth the earth and the world. You are God without beginning or end. You turn humankind back to dust and say, go back, you creatures of the earth. For in your sight 1,000 years are like yesterday, come and gone, no more than a watch in the night. You sweep us away like a dream, fleeting as the grass that springs up in the morning. In the morning it sprouts, but by evening it is withered and died. Make us realize how short life is, that we may gain wisdom of heart. Now Psalm 145, 8, 9, and 14. God, you are gracious and compassionate, slow to anger and rich in love. God, you are good to all and compassionate toward all your creatures. You lift up those who are falling and raise up those who are oppressed. The eyes of all look to you in hope, and you give them their food in due season. You open your hand and satisfy the desire of every living thing. God, you are just in all your ways and loving toward all that you have created. And finally, these words from the Gospel of John. Peace I leave with you. My peace I give to you. But the kind of peace I give you is not like the world's peace. Don't let your hearts be distressed. Don't be fearful.
I did not know Beth personally, but you did. That's why you're here today, to honor her life. And I want you to feel invited in these next few minutes to share a memory that stays with you about your experience with Beth. Or maybe there's a word or a phrase that keeps coming to mind. Maybe it was Beth's kind of signature thing that she said or something she did that captures her essence. Maybe there's a song lyric or a story that you can't get out of your head that keeps replaying as you think about her life. Perhaps there's something you appreciated about Beth that in her passing you want to keep alive. One way to do that is to integrate that characteristic into your own life. Perhaps you'd be willing to share that with us. Stacy Woodland, Executive Director of YWCA, will begin to share memories of Beth. And then I'll, after she and a few others of her dear colleagues and friends have an opportunity, then in a few minutes beyond that, I will invite anybody to come to this microphone to share your own thoughts or memories. That will allow others who are watching virtually to hear you if you use the microphone, and everyone in the room. Please get to come up here. So please leave your mask on if you come to speak, and know that I will wipe the microphone after each speaker in order to ensure that we are as safe as possible. Please. Good morning.
Jane Austen said, "It isn't what we say or think that defines us. It is what we do." Beth Rakowski's life of service began long before she joined YWCA Tri-County Area as a volunteer in the then adult literacy department in about the year 2000. But I like to believe it was when she found her true calling. And not just within the walls and figures of YWCA, but in the community of Pottstown. She was a quiet connector, offering her support to the theater community of Steel River, lending her beloved power tools to Habitat for Humanity, and of course, her love of facts and figures to YW as its first finance director and then chief financial officer. Beth was a fierce guardian and steward of YWCA's assets, and I found this out in my first week as executive director when she printed business cards for me on the property. When I stated that I really wanted to have professionally printed cards, Beth whipped out the board-approved budget that had been passed a month before I started and pointed out that the board hadn't put a line item in the budget for me to get professionally printed business cards. It was then that I knew that as co-leaders of this esteemed YW association, we were either going to crash and burn or take this YW where no one dreamed it could go. In the process of our work, we taught each other. We didn't always agree, but we always respected each other, and through our shared love of all things YW, we grew to love one another. She worked tirelessly for that YW. For this YW until the last days of her life. And the YW could never pay that. I will miss Beth. We will all miss Beth. And the YW community will miss Beth. It is our intention to start a scholarship fund in her honor to support and continue her legacy of service. She dared to be powerful, and through this scholarship, we will empower girls and young women who dare to be as powerful as she. Thank you.
I'd like to invite Ann Steele.
Good morning. I don't have a lot to share, but just wanted the family especially to know, and I know everybody else that's here, know how much that meant to me. I only know her, I haven't got an opportunity to know her for the last 6 years, but not only as a supervisor, but as a friend, she was just so comforting to me at times. She just kind of got me from being able to, understand some of the family issues I would bring to her, or just everyday work at the wall. She could bring me in when I was getting upset about something and say, settle down. This is what you need to focus on. This is where we're going. We'll get through it. The one thing that we kind of had an ongoing issue about, though, was her plants. She loved her plants, and she had many of them in her office. And she dared to entrust them to me when she would go away. I said, Beth, I don't do well with plants. I have one plant at home, and it's close to dying. Just warning you. So she went away for the first couple of times, and I did okay. And then one time she came in, and she said, what did you do? I'm like, I watered your plants. And she said, yeah, you watered them, but I didn't tell you to drown. I'm like, Beth, I warned you. But I just wanted the family to know that those plants have moved on to more trusting hands than I. And they will be taken care of. But I did want to read something that just kind of expressed my feelings better than I could tell you myself. So this is just a poem I found when I was online. Although unheard, I thank you for always being there. Even when you were bedridden, you always seemed to care. You meant so much to all of us. You were special, and that's no lie. You brightened up the darkest day and even the grayest sky. Many tears I have seen cry, they have all poured out like rain. You know that you're happy now, but you're no longer in pain. Years on, I remember you and what you used to say. You made each of us smile and wait for us to say. They say in time it gets easier. I think this isn't true. Because even after all this time, I still don't know how to say it. I was not ready to say goodbye. It's just overcooked. On this day, we remember you. I take a second. A friendship is forever. It's apart. Although you're away physically, you always be in my life.
Tamika Henry.
Good morning, all. I am representing the YW Board of Directors. I've been on the Board of Directors just on and off for over since like 2011. And so I've known Beth for quite a while. So the poem I wanted to read today was If I Be the First to Die by Nicholas Evans. If I be the first of us to die, that grief not blacken longer sky. Be bold yet modest in your grieving. There is a change, but not a leaving. But just as death is part of life, the dead live on forever in the living. And all of the gathered riches of our journey, the moment shared, the mysteries explored, the steady layering of intimate stories. The things that made us laugh or weeping or singing, the joy of sun and snow were first and flurry of the spring. The wordless language of look and touch, the knowing, each giving and each taking. Things are not flowers that fade, nor trees that fall and crumble, nor are the stone. For even stone cannot the wind and rain withstand, and mighty mountain peaks in time reduced to sand. What we were, we are. What we had, we have. It could join paths in perishable present. But when you walk the wood where once we walked together, and scan in vain the dapple bank beside you for my shadow, we'll pause where we always did upon the hill to gaze across the land, and spotting something, reach by habit for my hand, and finding none, feel sorrow start to steal upon you. Be still, close your eyes, breathe, listen for my football in your heart. I am not gone, but merely walk within you.
Lena Devlin. Hi, everybody. I don't work at the Y, so I'm going to introduce myself. My name is Lena Devlin. I'm the artistic director at Steel River Playhouse, but I haven't always been there. Back in 2006, I was a volunteer with this fledgling organization called Village Productions that didn't have a building and was renting space at the Y and renting space at Montgomery County Community College. And I fell in love with the people that were working really hard to make something new and great in Pottstown. And one of those people was Beth. Sorry, I haven't seen Beth in several years, so I feel a little silly being so emotional about this, but Beth is who taught me that service to community is where it's at. She didn't do it intentionally. She did it as Stacy so beautifully said, because of what she did. I just watched her function, and it was so clear how what she was doing was so natural to her and not only brought her joy, but brought joy to others. And she volunteered at Steel River and helped us open that building. I don't know if you've been there, but it's pretty phenomenal. And the people who were there and did that were all pretty phenomenal. And Beth was also the one that built our box office. She, in fact, much of the way it functions to this day is the foundation that Beth built and that Beth put together. And I don't know how many of you knew Marta Kiesling, who was the executive director who got started, but I witnessed some amazing discussions between Beth and Marta. And Beth was just so tenacious, and I heard the word fierce used, when she believed in what she was talking about, and she always stood behind what was best for the community, always. And it was inspirational. I literally haven't probably seen Beth since she stopped at Steel River, which I think is probably when she got employed at the Y. She was obviously volunteering at those places for a long time. And she came back and volunteered some, but it's probably been 6 years since I've seen her. I've spoken to her, but I haven't seen her in years. And she stays with me. I know she comes into my head at least once a week in my service to the community. And really, is there any greater gift that we can give? And what a legacy. I aspire to that. So thank you for inviting me. Kelly Gross.
Good morning. I am
honored to share the words of Mary Ann Lynch, who volunteered with Beth during her time at Habitat for Humanity. Mary Ann writes, "When I learned of Beth's passing, lots of thoughts went through my head. How I would miss her beautiful smile, her positive attitude, and what a loss for the Pottstown community this would be. Beth was such a bright spot in my time at Habitat, and the world would be an emptier place without her in it. When I came to Habitat in 2007, she was one of the first people I met in Pottstown. There had always been a bit of competition between the Norristown folks and Pottstown volunteers, and Beth really took the time to explain who the volunteers in Pottstown were and why this mission was so important to them. It was clear from the beginning that she was special, as comfortable crunching the numbers as she was crushing cement for the homes we were working on. She was little but mighty. Using a sawzall or lifting a wall was all in a day's work. It was more than just building, though. Beth sat on the Pottstown steering committee and helped define Habitat's presence in the community. I had 2 runs at Habitat, first as the development director and then as its leader. When I came back to run the organization, Beth was one of the first people to welcome me. Her kindness and action started a friendship that spanned the next several years. Whenever possible, we would connect for coffee or lunch, talking about Habitat, Pottstown, the YWCA, and everything in between. More than once, I tried to entice her to join me as the finance director of Habitat, and more than once, she politely declined because she really loved the work and her friends at YWCA. I knew they had someone special working for them, and they knew it too. I was always in awe of her positivity, her excitement for the things happening in Pottstown, and her own life, and of course, that infectious smile. I will miss my friend and my cheerleader, and I am sorry for us all. We have lost one of the good ones.
Thank you. At this point, we'd like to invite many of you who would like to come and share a word, a story, a remembrance of Beth. I'm going to meet you down on the floor here. We're going to move this microphone over so that our friends who are watching virtually can see and hear you. Please come. Take a moment to share your memory or word or thought. Appreciation.
Good morning. I'm Dawn Jackson Short. I worked with Beth at the YWCA. Beth and I started the YWCA on this very same day on that April. And Beth has taught me a whole lot. And I always knew her to be, I did turn my phone off, y'all. I want y'all to know that. I did turn my phone off. I know Beth to be very smart, and she taught me a lot. She ain't pull no punches though. She ain't play. You know, sometimes I thought she was mean. But she really wasn't, because she had a really good spirit. And when things didn't go right at the YWCA, it really made her sad, because she always wanted the best for the YWCA. So I just want to say, Beth, I know you're in heaven, and just thank you for letting me share.
Morning, everybody. I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Diane Coleman. I worked with Beth at the YW as well. My word for her, dedication, as far as it comes to the service that she provided to YW. But we've spent a lot of time talking about how much she's given to the community. Really, I always enjoyed Beth from a personal perspective as well. We spent a lot of time talking about the gardening, and how even at the towards the end there, she's like, "Oh, look, I have plenty of hostas. Please come and take them from my yard and replant them in yours." And she would share all of her bounty of her gardens and advice. She was also so interested in essential oils and really supported everybody's well-being and health at the YW. She really tried to influence people to live a healthy lifestyle and enjoy balance and enjoy life. She enjoyed her travels to Maine. Her and Ray spent a lot of time, even through his experience. At the same time, Ray was going through his treatments. I was going through my own medical treatments, and the two of us would spend a lot of time talking and comforting each other as we go through these life changes. And it was exciting to see them get engaged and get married and really celebrate their lives. And she had a lot of vision and hope for what she wanted in life. And it's sad that she's not going to be able to see that through. And I'm sure Ray and Chuck and their family miss her dearly. And so does the family here. So I just want to remember all of her and everything that she's brought to this world. Good morning. I'm Kathleen Keeley. I'm the Senior Early Education Director here. And Beth was really important to all of us. One of the things I was thinking about this morning are some humorous things that happened with Beth. And sometimes Beth and I were in some real fierce altercations, I would say, maybe, about, or beliefs, I guess, maybe, about how things should go. And it was, when Stacy shared her story this morning, I could picture so many times that things happened and I thought, I know there's a reason that she is frustrated with me, and I'm going to try to figure it out. And I would get angry, and Stacy was my support, and I would figure out how to work it through. But one of the things I remember after Beth got married, one time I was in Stacy's office, or we were walking through the building, and she had this really, Stacy used the word sexy, blouse on. And Beth stopped and looked and made sure, Stacy said there's even skin showing, and she looked to make sure, because she was so concerned and loved. The other thing that I enjoyed, Diane talked about, was I'm from Maine, and when I would go to Eastern Maine, a slice of blueberry pie from Helen's was something that I would bring for her. And she said she would eat it in small chunks so that it could survive for a while. And as Diane shared, there were some things that happened in my family. And Beth was the person who was so strong and there for me. And during that time, I would find small bottles of essential oils that she would leave in my office. And sometimes they might have been there for days, because if you know my office and my desk, I don't know exactly when they had been put there, but I know her heart is what I'm going to miss.
Good morning. My name is Linda Morris, affectionately known by my closer family as Jules. I met Beth when she was 20 years old. I think it was one of her first jobs. And she was green, very green, but she was the most determined and attentive person I knew. It was a packaging company, and we had 3 companies within one. And I used to run all over the place with the 3 of them, and she learned real quick how to be right there beside me, behind me, and alongside, whichever was necessary. She ended up in the accounting department after receptionist and so forth. And I knew that Beth would be something someday to someone. She had the biggest heart, the most sensible way of explaining herself. She was determined for you to understand what she was talking about. Shortly after she started, I married my husband, who this weekend has gone 18 years from cancer as well. And she was such a person that held on to me no matter whether we saw each other once a week, once a month, once a year. It didn't matter. You just snapped right where you picked up from before, and it never ever changed. We continued to the same hairdresser for 30 plus years. And I'm struggling with this. She belongs here, right here with us. Because without her, we're less. But her looking over us and us knowing how much she cared about everything and everyone. We will get through this. She will be there for us. She will be there in the times of sadness, times of love, and whatever we need, because she was always there. Thank you.
Good morning. So I'm Beth's brother, Chuck. I know some of you. I'm just so touched by all the stories and anecdotes with her life. She was a wonderful person. We know that. She will be missed. Bonnie, who was the person who was taking care of plants? Oh, okay. So, you talked about that. She told me she asked me one time, she's like, I'm going to Maine. Can you just kind of come by the house, take the mail in, water the plant? Very specific. This plant needs this. This plant needs an ice cube. Don't overwater things, like it was just very, it. She was very specific. She was very direct. Sometimes, a little bit blunt, right? But that was my sister. And I'm kind of the same. I don't pull punches. But I just want to thank you all for coming out and sharing your stories. And this touches me so much on behalf of the family, my parents, on Ray, her husband, who just pray for him because he is taken ill. His fall, he fell. He's as far as I know, he's in the hospital with some injuries to his shoulder and knee. So pray for his willingness to go on with life without him. She will always be in our hearts, in our memories, and and the legacy that the YW is going to continue on with her, with the scholarship her. I just want to thank you all for coming.
With these words from the Apostle Paul in 2 Corinthians 4:16-5:1. And that is why we don't lose heart. Though this physical self of ours may be falling into decay, the inner self is renewed day by day. These light and momentary troubles train us to carry the weight of the eternal glory, which will make these troubles seem insignificant by comparison. For we have no eyes for things that are visible, but only for things that are invisible. It's a good thing to laugh. It is a beautiful gift to laugh. We'll take that gift. Apostle Paul would have laughed too. How's it now? You would have laughed. And so as he was saying, we have no eyes for things that are visible, but only for things that are invisible. Visible things last only a time, but the invisible is eternal. For we know that when our earthly tent is folded up, there is waiting for us a house built by God, everlasting home in the heavens, not made by feet. I just want to say these people. I want to say what you already know, that it's difficult to lose one we've loved. And when you're surprised by your own grief about that, remember that it is compounded, right, by other griefs you have experienced. This is one more. It's especially difficult when we are certain that the person deserved more time, had more to do, had more vision, more gifts, more energy to offer the world. Our hearts are heavy with the loss of God, but also with the losses we've endured throughout our lifetimes, especially in these years of pandemic. Grief compounds if we don't attend to it, if we don't find a place and a perspective for it in our personal and communal lives. And that's why this time together is so important. It's one way to acknowledge to ourselves and to each other as a community that we have lost something, someone, and that it is worth our time and energy to gain a perspective on how to come to terms with both life and death. The writer of the words I just read to you, the Apostle Paul, knew about grief in his own life and in the life of the communities he interacted with. He knew personal, physical pain, and he knew how pain can disrupt a community. He also knew that putting grief into perspective can help prevent a sense of being overwhelmed and overcome or consumed by the tragedy of loss. Part of how he finds perspective is believing that there is more than what can just be seen on the surface in this life, and believing that there is another one beyond this in God's presence that gives him and us hope. And I don't know what your sense of that is, but while I share Paul's hope about what might be to come, I also believe that God lives among us here and now. And in some measure, I want you to consider that what you have described in Beth, what you have experienced in Beth, was in fact a glimpse of God. The quiet connector, the fierce steward, the friend comforting and understanding, the giver of life, plants everywhere, right, in the office. The teaching one another to create and have a vision, have one for oneself and for one's community. He said what she did brought joy. And that tenacity, that I'm not going to let go of it thing, that need to make you understand exactly what she was saying or meaning. Service to community. It looks a little bit to me like God. In fact, it looks a lot to me. God's tenacious love, God's tenacious call to us to continue to serve each other rather than to be served. Right? Can't we see all of that, something as divine love, by whatever name you call it, that creates and inspires and continues to fill us? What you called out in Beth, what you experienced in and through her life, what you appreciated about her actions and feelings in the world could be forgotten after today or a few weeks or a few months, because we do need to continue to live. Or it can inspire and challenge us, all of us, to do in the world what she was doing in our world, causing us to reflect, causing us to think deeply, causing us to hold on to what we believe and articulate it in a way that's clear and compassionate, serving our community and the greater world. Beth can continue to live among us if we choose not only to remember her, but commit ourselves to becoming like her in some way, in one of those positive ways that affect you. And I understand Jesus in the gospel to be telling us that the kingdom of God is not only for heaven, but it's here for earth. He says, today I have fulfilled this in your presence. And so we can participate and continue to participate in creating God's equitable reign here. When our lives honor God, when our lives honor Beth, when we are compassionate and merciful to others, when we show love, prioritize justice, and seek. Paul speaks truth when he says that things are visible aren't lasting, whether it be the things we possess or our very bodies themselves. Disease like cancer and COVID remind us of that. But what can be lasting are the things you've named, the things you honor and celebrate in Beth. What can be lasting is the compassion and the friendship and the laughter and the love. Those things last. And they will last when we embody them and pass them along. Finally, he says, for when we know when our earthly tent is folded up, there is waiting for us a house built by God, an everlasting home in the heavens, not made by human hand. Beth's earthly tent folded up all too soon for us and for her. And difficult as it is comforting to know that we can release her to a reality without the challenge. And in her name and with her spirit alive in us together, we can work for a place right here in this community where God's presence is known in and through us as it has been known to you. It is difficult to lose someone you care about. There is no way around that. But it is fulfilling to look for ways that you can continue to keep Beth's spirit alive by embodying something of who she was in your own life. In doing so, we will magnify her life as an expression of God's love and grace. And we'll together continue the work of equity and justice in the world. I invite you. God of all things, of sea and sky, heaven and earth, this world and the next. God of all, regardless of whether we believe in you or call you by some other name. In these moments of reflection on Beth's life, we celebrate the ways we see you in her, in each other, and in the world. Thank you for giving us Beth, for what she meant to so many individually and collectively. We thank you for the relationships she gave herself to and the commitments that we shared alongside her. We pray that in these days of grieving, you will comfort broken hearts, and you'll give us hope for a new appreciation of life. Fill us with compassion for ourselves and for others, and make us avenues of grace. And the challenge of these days call us again to love one another, to build your beloved community here and now. to be focused on things invisible that are lasting, to look with new appreciation on one another, and to find peaceful rest. We pray to one God who is every name, and no name in all. You are invited to a reception in the room that you came through to get to this space. To greet one another, I believe there is grab and go goodies for you. There's a book to sign if you have not already done so. We're going to move these photo albums into that room so that you can have a glimpse of Beth and share a moment together. My friends, may mercy and love and joy give you comfort and hope as we celebrate and honor a life given to us by God and return to God's Son. May you know the value of your own life and God's love for you. And may you find comfort and joy in helping live God's life into the world. Go in peace.